So we're looking at Acts chapter 9 and we're thinking about Paul on the road to Damascus, who has kind of an amazing encounter with God, well, specifically with Jesus, which is kind of awesome. Now, Genesis 3:22 says that we all know basically the difference between right and wrong. It was put in there when Adam and Eve ate of the fruit of the tree of good and knowledge, and we all know then that God is real. We know right and wrong. In 1 John 3 verse 6, you can't have God in you and stay the same. That's not a scriptural translation, that's just my paraphrase. Romans 1, nobody can say that they don't know of God. It's not an excuse that you can use, well, no one told me. That's not okay. It's like in law. You can't say, oh, innocence and ignorance. That doesn't work as a thing. Oh, I didn't know it was a 40-mile-an-hour limit. I was doing 70. That's not a defence. And in the same way, we don't have that same defence when we stand before God. We can't say, well, nobody told me. We all know who God is. When you know Jesus Christ, it changes who you are. Now, we knew somebody a number of years back and they had an amazing encounter with Jesus one time, and it was something they talked about, but it was all they ever talked about. They never talked about the next thing that God was doing in their life. They didn't talk about their prayer times. It was just this one encounter they'd had with Jesus. And as real as that was, it didn't really change them. It made some differences in their life. But when we really know God, when we really truly meet with Jesus, it has to change who we are. We can't walk the same once we've met with the Son of God. And what we see in Acts 9 is Paul walking along. This is the guy, Paul, the Christian killer. And he was on his way to get more Christians, men or women, didn't care which, that he could prosecute and persecute for being blasphemous and evil people. Not a nice chap. On the way, Jesus turns up. Paul sees a light, hears a voice. The people that are travelling with him just heard the voice. Kind of amazing. I always feel sorry for Ananias, who he went on to see Paul blinded. His friends take him to where he's got to go. And God speaks to this man, this faithful man, Ananias, and says, I want you to go to Paul and I want you to heal him, basically. And Ananias says, God, do you realise he's not a very nice character? He's probably going to kill me. God says, well, I want you to go. So off he goes. And we see Paul healed by God through Ananias, who faithfully goes and does what God's asking him to do. He has to change his heart. He thinks Paul's going to kill me. He has to trust God and go with that. An encounter with God on its own is not enough for salvation. It's the beginning of something amazing. But if we're not changing, it's not enough. We have to have more than that first encounter. We all know of God, but we all need to know him personally. Paul immediately sees Jesus, immediately recognises he needs to change who he is, and that's exactly what he goes on to do. Paul becomes Saul, becomes the writer of most of the New Testament, an amazing author. It's awesome. Profound change should lead us to a profound change. Profound experience should lead us to a profound change. Paul meets Jesus on the road in a blinding light, changes. He immediately recognises Jesus as Lord, which is kind of awesome. God is very, very, very good. Doesn't really describe him enough, but God is very, very good. We all know of him, but we all need to decide to follow him. Meeting with Jesus is a brilliant beginning. But as we saw in this person's life a number of years ago, they met Jesus but didn't change. They stayed the same person. And all they talked about was their encounter with Jesus. But we need to do much more than just have an encounter with Jesus. We need to transform our heart, our mind. Everything about us should change. And as we walk along in faith with Jesus Christ, we become more like him, less like ourselves, and more the best person that we can possibly be, as Jesus transforms us from the inside.